This service I'm going to read to you, first of all, from 2 Kings 4, 1 to 17. It's a well-known passage of the Bible. You've probably heard it spoken about many times. But perhaps there's an angle here that I missed for years reading this passage that became gold to me when I was trying to culturally engineer a different kind of new breed church in the north of England. It says, the wife of a man from the company of the prophets cried out to Elisha, your servant, my husband, is dead, and you know that he revered the Lord. But now his creditor is coming to take my sons as his slaves. Elisha replied to her, how can I help you? Tell me, what do you have in your house? Your servant has nothing there at all except a small jar of olive oil. Elisha said, go around and ask all your neighbors for empty jars. Don't ask for just a few. Then go inside and shut the door behind you and your sons. Pour oil into all the jars, and as each is filled, put it to one side. She left him and shut the door behind her and her sons. They brought the jars to her, and she kept pouring. When all the jars were full, she said to her son, bring me another one. But he replied, there is not another jar left. Then the oil stopped flowing. She told Elisha, and he said, go, sell the oil, pay your debts, and you and your sons can live on what is left. I want you to notice something here that's important to mention while it's on my mind to say this to you. This didn't occur to me until later on in my Christian life, and especially my leadership as a pastor. The oil didn't run out. The oil stopped flowing, not because God ran out of oil. The oil stopped flowing because she ran out of vessels. You remember that little bit we read there? She's asking for more vessels, unaware that they run out. So her kids say to her, there's no more left. And then the oil stopped flowing. I tell you that to remind you, this came to me slowly because of the poor indoctrination I'd had as a Christian growing up in the church and as a leader with leaders around me that didn't understand this. And this is one of the reasons why the church isn't growing in the UK, and why so many people are resistant to church, is that God is not drawn to fullness. God is drawn to emptiness. God stopped pouring when she ran out of emptiness, when she ran out of empty vessels. This is a fundamental, foundational concept and insight to the nature of God. In the church, what we've done, we've made fullness the goal. The lyrics of our songs, often the language of our prayers, our conversations, our testimonies, have led us to believe that the idea is to be full of the Spirit, full of faith, full of life, full of joy. And this fullness idea grips us. But actually, God is not interested in fullness. God is always interested in emptiness. When your church runs out of empty people to find, God kind of loses interest. And this has been the story through history of many churches that started strong, reaching people, and then got comfortable. And the church became more like a country club than it did a rescue center, I suppose. We forget where we came from. And if you've been a Christian generationally, you forget what it's like to be around emptiness, perhaps. Even in our own lives, God is interested in your emptiness, not your fullness. If you are so full of ideas and ways of doing things and ways of thinking and habits of life and ways of operating, and you're full relationally and you're full mentally and you're full emotionally, if there's a fullness going on in your life, God's almost like waiting for you to get some space for Him to keep pouring into your life. I know it's easy to think of that principle in terms of reaching an unsaved person who's empty, but I'm switching it now back on all of us. Because the idea with God is that we are supposed to live full but die empty. In other words, every day of our lives, the idea is we keep pouring out because we have excess. Some of us in here are so blessed we can hardly stand it. We have a massive Christian obesity issue in the church. Spiritually, I mean. We are overfed and under-exercised spiritually often. And we come and we get blessed and we get blessed and we get more blessed and we get more blessed, that's not the idea. The idea here isn't to come and, have an all-you-can-eat buffet every time you come and walk out so stuffed and then come back and do it all again next week. The idea is to pour yourself out, to keep finding emptiness, for God to continue to pour himself out through your life towards emptiness, the emptiness in you, the answers you don't have, the needs you don't have, the awarenesses you haven't come to yet, the understandings you still need to come to, the openness of heart that you haven't reached yet, the lack of judgmental attitude you need to let go of. All of these things are what God stays interested in. But when we think we're full and we've made it and we're there, it's almost like God begins to lose interest, because the idea is that you live your life, of course, live your life as full as possible, but don't put a lid on it. The idea is to keep finding empty vessels, as it were, for God to keep pouring. So when she ran out of emptiness, God stopped pouring out. And I don't want that to ever happen to you personally or to this church. You say, well, this is a great church. Yeah, I spent my life around great churches. A lot of them are not here anymore because they forgot this. They got too comfortable. They became too much about what happens up here, and about performing and superstars and celebrities and look how great our church is. It became about that. It becomes about that often. And the bigger a thing gets, a business, an organization, whatever it may be, a government, the bigger a thing gets, the more it takes over. And the more you are maintaining its needs to keep that moving, to keep the machine moving, and we forget people. And we forget we're about people. It's about the next one. It's about leaving the 99, which is all of us, for the one that's missing. I mean, that's so counterintuitive to think a good shepherd would neglect the majority and go look for the one that's missing and leave at risk the 99 that are gathered in. But that's the kind of shepherd Jesus said he was, which is why the religious people found him so difficult to manage, found him upsetting. Because his whole energy was looking for emptiness. His whole philosophy was, I'm looking for the ones that are still missing. You are found. If you're found here today, then you're kind of home and dry. You found. But after you've found, you then join in the discovery of others that were you a year or 2 or 20 ago. You're constantly looking for who else needs to be found. We're part of that search and rescue mission that eventually came into your neck of the woods. Remember, Jesus told that parable of the rich fool in Luke 12, whose barns were full. And he prided himself on the fullness, that was the whole idea. And he sat down on his fullness, and Jesus called him a fool, because the idea is not fullness. The idea was to make sure that whatever you did, you always left room for others to be fed and helped and nourished with your fullness. The parable of the banquet, where the master of the banquet, a picture of God metaphorically, has a banquet, and he sends his servants out to invite the invited guests. The invited guests, one by one, send back the message to the host, or we're sorry, we're busy. We're busy investing in something, or I'm in a new relationship with someone, or whatever it was they said, they couldn't come. And the invitation list said, we can't come because our lives are too full, we're too preoccupied, we're too busy, we'll get around to it later, and sent back, we can't come to the banquet. The invitation list, by the way, was really alluding to the Jews who were on the invite list. But they were the ones that didn't want to come because they didn't recognize Jesus as a legitimate host. So they said, no, we can't come. We don't. So Jesus said in the story, the master of the banquet said to his servants, okay, forget that crowd. Forget the full people. Forget the busy people. Now he said, go beyond them. Throw your circle of love wider. Go to the highways and byways and look for the people that never dreamed they would be invited. Look for the people who never dreamed they'd be included in such an opportunity. Go to the poor and the blind and the lame and the broken, he said to them. So they went out wider still and invited and brought all these people in. Then they came back and said, we've done as much as we could. And the master said, the house isn't full yet. Go and do it again. Go wider still. My house must be full. And so these parables, these conversations Jesus had, were not just nice stories to preach. They're insights to God's nature, to his characteristic. And we've missed sight of that. When you see a parable as good preaching fodder, and don't realize the parable is a story. It's an insight about the nature and character and values of God, is what I think I want to say to you, first of all, about the idea here that the oil stopped pouring when she ran out of emptiness. Okay. The other thing going on here is this in this story. Supposing she'd said to Elisha, thank you for your intervention in my tragedy here, because she is in debt. Her husband was a member of Elisha's ministry team in the School of Prophets. And he died leaving huge debts, which proves that being in ministry doesn't make you good with money. I know it's a cheap shot, but it's true. And so she's in huge debt. And in those days, the debtors came and took the kids. Now they take the furniture, the TV. On some days, you'd rather they take the kids, right? No, leave the TV, take the kids, please. That's a real issue and still is in some parts of the world. So she appeals to Elisha for help. And you know the story, we just read it. So he says to her, look, what I want you to do is go around to your neighbors, knock on every door, get as many vessels as you can, and then you and your sons go door to door, 3 of you, then get them all in your house, shut the door behind you, and then clearly something supernatural is going to unfold. Now, imagine if she said to Elisha, whoa, hang on. I like this idea, except the neighbors bit. Because we don't get on with the neighbors. Or most of them anyway. And she may have said to Elisha, you see, because over the 20 years we've lived here, you know, we've really made a stand for our faith. You remember that earlier thing I said? You know, and so, you know, we've made a real stand because the people at number 32, we think they're living in sin. So we've really had to have difficult conversations with them. The people at number 45, we think they're a gay couple, so we can't really involve with those people. We made clear where we stand with them. The people down there, they used to go to our church, but they left in bad attitude. So we kind of avoid them. It's just difficult where we see them. We cross the street, don't speak to each other. The people down the street, they're a different kind of church to ours, and we kind of don't see eye to eye. The people over there, they're Democrat. They're Republican. They're black. They're white. They're rich. They're poor. And she could have said, right through every neighborhood opportunity, this leaves me with 3 homes. I have 3 homes I can go to, perhaps, because all these other people will not be happy to see my face at their door, especially asking for their assistance. In other words, this miracle was as much a miracle of relationship as it was of anything supernatural. In fact, perhaps more so. God would do the supernatural bit in the pouring out, but the size of that was going to be determined by the size of her relationship circle. So is yours. The idea of this message is, if you like titles, and I do, titles live longer often than the content of what was in that title. That's why people work very hard on titles of movies or books or messages. It lives longer, and you think, oh, that movie, what was it? And the title comes back, then into the conversation once you recall the title. So I, in my pastoring, became very intentional about titles that that lived longer. I meet people around the world all the time that say, oh man, 25 years ago they mentioned a message because I was careful about the title. And this title is called Your Resources in Your Relationships, because they are. Everything you need, someone's got. And if you don't know them, you will go without it. And I learned this early on in England because with 98% of people not going to church and quite anti-church, I knew many things we will need are not in the church. They're outside the church. They're in our community. Many people that are the gatekeepers of our communities aren't in the church, and in our country, quite anti-church. So unless I learn to build a life and encourage our church to build a life that is relationally rich, not relationally narrow, because we live like this with our unsaved family and friends and neighbors, and we narrow our relational pool, not knowing we're narrowing our resources. Everything you need, someone has. So her miracle would have been far smaller had she not built good relationships over the years they'd lived there with the neighbors. I remember when I was pastoring, I don't know, maybe 10 years into my 32, we had the power company dug a large hole outside our church property, and our property was one road in, one road out, this large hole next to the driveway entrance, laying power cables, maybe half the size of this platform, the hole. But the job was done, the cables were laid, but the hole wasn't filled back in. Whoever that crew was didn't show up. So a week goes by, 2 weeks go by, it's huge inconvenience to our church, thousands of people every week in and out of that road. It was just a nightmare. And because I pride myself on getting things done, that's what we leaders do, and I had great people around me like Pastor Torren does, and I met some this morning, people that get things done, we couldn't get this thing done. Went on for weeks. And I was kind of obsessed with the hole. I had a relationship with the hole. Every year I would publicly give a whole update and say, I'm sorry, church, this week we did this and we really tried, and they promised us, but nothing happened. And I felt so bad that we couldn't get this fixed. And I was on this particular day having a rant, a whole rant, because I was like 5 weeks in or something. And I was in the lobby afterwards chatting and meeting with people, and a man in our church said to me, I have a friend here today, so I'd like you to meet him. So Phil in our church brought his friend Sam to meet me. Sam said to me, it's the first time here today. He said, I heard you talking about the hole. I said, yes. And I gave Sam a full version because it was new material. You know, Sam was fresh meat. So he deserved the full vision. I'm like, Sam, let me tell you about the hole. So he said, no. He said, how long has it been like this? It's about 5 weeks. He said, okay. He said, who's the power company? So I told him, okay. He said, give me a minute. Never met Sam, never been to our church. Give me a minute. He goes off to one side, pulls out his cell phone, speed dials a number, and I could hear him from a distance. Hi, this is Sam. I'm down at this Life Church place. There's a big hole here. I think it's one of yours. Yeah. Okay, can you fix it for me, Joe? Okay, Joe, yeah, great. You do it, okay. Okay, I'm going to tell this guy you're going to fix it. Okay, thanks, Joe. See you next week. Don't be late for golf. Sam and Joe. Sam comes back and says to me, good. It'll be sorted. Joe will fix it. To which I'm thinking, who is, right? Who is Joe? We have spent weeks, we have dealt with every person in that company who is the person you should talk to about hole filling. We spoke to them all. Every department, every person. We have never heard ever of anyone called Joe. Who's Joe? This is Sunday, midday-ish. Now, some of you may not know, but in England on Sundays, it's still like Charles Dickens times. Everything shuts down. So this is Sunday. We're weeks on it. By the end of that day, the hole was filled in. I had that bit, but my real thing was, who is? If I'd have known Joe 5 weeks ago, your resources and your relationships, the hole would have been filled in. But I didn't know Joe. You don't know Joe. Some of you right now need a Joe in your life. You do. Sometimes all you need to alleviate the pain in your life, to be a game-changing intervention in your life, in your business, you need Joe. You need a phone number. Someone has it, you don't have it because you don't know Joe. So all I knew was Phil that came to our church. I knew Phil. Phil brought Sam. Sam knew Joe. You see, the relational network. All I knew is Phil. You may be the Phil in that chain reaction. All we know is you. But you are here in this room today with people you know that would never dream of coming to church. They're not interested in church. You've tried to invite them, or maybe you didn't because the whole energy is don't think about it. But we need you. God needs you to stay friends with these people, to include them in your circle of love, to stay in a good flow with them. Because some of these people, and I don't mean in a transactional using them way, but I mean not feeling you have to make some kind of stand or have an intense conversation or say or do something that alienates them because it makes you feel better. Your ego needs to speak your mind. Calm down and think. This could be, some of you know people that are not here, they're really connected. They'll never come to church. But they may have a phone number that Pastor Torah needs 6 months from now. And these people are in your relationship circle and they have a resource that will meet a need if you haven't upset the neighbors in your life, as it were. Your resources are in your relationships. Build a relationally rich life and you will have a resource-rich life. Every time you add a new person to your relational world, you increase your relational capital it's multiplied by whatever they bring to the table. Some people have skills and insights and abilities that you could only imagine. I used to, one of the things we did in our church as an outreach to our community was every year we had a Christmas cabaret. And we had 2 back-to-back evenings, and hundreds of people came to each of those evenings. But what was interesting to me is when some of our team auditioned people in the church to perform at the cabaret. It was shocking the talent in our church sat there. And we just said we want, comedians or magicians or whatever your thing is, your party piece, come and audition. And I'd known these people for years. And some people would come and just do it. I'm like, what? I didn't know you could sing. I didn't know you could recite poetry. I didn't know you could do acrobats across the stage. I didn't know you did stand-up comedy. I didn't know that at all about these people who I'd known for years. Those people are in this room. People here with talents and abilities and geniuses that you don't think this church needs because you think, well, I'm not up here and, I'm not in ministry, that ministry word that excludes most people, and it shouldn't. We've overused and wrongly used that word. Ministry is these people. No, it's not. Ministry is everyone. It's not ministry isn't a paid job. Ministry is what everybody does. We're all in the ministry. You're all in ministry. Some people are getting paid for it. Most of us aren't, but we're all in ministry. That's how it's supposed to be. That's the language for it. Some people are full-time ministry, but before they were full-time ministry, they better have been in ministry already. Don't get all ministerial after you get a paycheck. No, that's the problem in the world right now. One of the problems is one of the seminars that are around the world, I work with corporates a lot around the world. One of the things I'm teaching corporates is a topic called servant leadership. I think that's the new version of leadership in the world, or my term for it anyway. I think the old command and obey is over, or is fading. We've still got a lot of it here, but it's fading. But servant leadership is emerging. And we keep putting the wrong people in charge. We keep choosing charisma and flash and showy. And we keep choosing men, left brain, logic, ego-driven guys, generally. It's still like that around the world generally. And we put people into leadership who weren't first of all servants. So you can bolt servanthood on later to someone who becomes a leader, but they were a leader they were serving in the first place. You're not trying to make it fit to someone who never loved and served people. You can't chuck it in later. If I serve people and become a leader, then the serving's already there. But if I lead but don't serve and become a leader, I'm not going to serve any more later than I do now. So we need to build a community of people that are serving their community and serving each other. Then if one of you becomes a leader, we know that the service issue isn't an issue because you are already serving. We promoted your servanthood, not your leadership. You just seem to serve in a way maybe that got someone's attention. You have a unique niche through your serving, whatever it may be, that got you into leadership. But the soundtrack to your leadership isn't leadership. It's service. So build a life with all of that in mind. Build a life that builds community, that builds relationally rich lives. Have conversations with people that are inclusive and not threatening and not us and them. If this church would get a hold of this idea that this church's resources, you're going to need in the future, you're going to need all kinds of stuff. You're going to need land and buildings and favor and openness. You're going to need hundreds of Joes the next 20 years. You're going to need Joes. So build the kind of church where Joe wants to help people like you. Where Joe has a good experience. If you're a Christian and Joe's your neighbor, he needs to be the first house you go to borrow vessels. Because you built a friendship with Joe. Joe's not going to come to church. Joe may not be the kind of person that would be approved of, perhaps by you or the church, but you built a great friendship with Joe. And there's going to come a time when you need what Joe's got. This is why Jesus never owned anything. Jesus wasn't an owner of anything. He borrowed stuff. And he borrowed stuff from Joe's. He built a life relationally rich. So that when he needed a donkey, he didn't need to own one, he borrowed one. He borrowed someone's car, as it were. When he needed a place to meet, he borrowed a room and rooms. When he needed a boat to speak from, he borrowed someone's boat as his platform to speak to the crowd from, because the shore was so full, the only place to stand is water. So he would borrow boats to travel in and to fish with and to speak from. He even borrowed a tomb. Didn't need to own one, just know someone that has one. He built a relationally rich life. Whatever he needed, he knew someone that had that. The disciples didn't understand this. It was difficult for them to catch it because Jews don't like non-Jews. One time his disciples stopped a guy casting out a demon because he wasn't one of their group. I know, there's still a lot of that about, by the way. He's not in our church. He's not in our ministry. You know, he's got no right to be doing that because we're the people that do that. We're the experts in that. We're the people that are known for that. Who do these people think they are, opening a church down the street like our church? Our church is better than their church. We have versions of those things still going on, that childishness that we have. And Jesus had that in his team. So they stop a guy casting out a demon. And they said to Jesus, you'll be so proud of us. That was the vibe, I think. We saw a guy today casting out a demon. Guess what we did, Jesus? We stopped him instantly. We said, hey, you can't do that. You're not part of Jesus' team. We are. We're the insiders. We're in the club. You can't be using Jesus' name when you don't know Jesus like we do. So they're tidying it up, doing the right thing. And almost Jesus, I suppose some version he said to them of, if you guys had a brain, you'd be dangerous. I think it was some version of that. He must have felt, we've got 3 years to get this thing figured out, and we've only got 6 months left, and this is happening. I'm glad the Holy Spirit's come in to carry on coaching you guys, because you're not getting it. And Jesus said to them this. He said, listen, you should not have done that. Here's why. Because he said, if people aren't against us, they're for us. What? What a philosophy about humans. In the church, we've built a philosophy generally, well, they're all against us. You know, we're God's people and they're against us. We're the salt and we're the light and, we're the remnant. And it's almost like that we build this adversarial energy towards us. And I've sat in churches, you have too, where the platform gives the impression that they're all out to get you. That they're the bad guys, we're the good guys. And if you're not careful, that gets subconsciously gets on you. And you live with this kind of resistant or, conspiracy theory, or you're like eyes on them, or you live with this like sensitivity, or I'm a minority, I'm persecuted, they're against me. That's what the disciples had going on. And he said, listen, if people aren't against you, assume they're for you. I'm going to say to you all in this church here, in this room and throughout the day, people aren't against you until you give them a reason to be. Outside of that, they're for you. And if that's not true, it's a far better way to live believing that's true. You with me? I used to speak when I was pastoring. I went through years of speaking to people in the room who I knew didn't like me. Church mafia, I called them. They would sit like this when I was speaking. Some version of body language that let me know they weren't happy. They weren't comfortable with what I'd said, or don't even think about looking in my direction when you said that. And what I was doing subconsciously, I was speaking to the minority that were against me. Because often the minority, as you know, make the most noise. Most people loved it. But most people who loved it didn't tell me that enough. Or didn't tell me it's specific enough. When people hate your guts and are against you, they will let you know very clearly, in detail, why. You'll never have a general enemy. All enemies are specific. Otherwise, the enemy element is not felt. They let you know why I'm an enemy. They'll let you know why you hurt them, why they're against you. They'll give you chapter and verse, and they'll do that for years. And I had those people in my life and in the church. And I was subconsciously trying to pander to them. Till one day I realized, this is ridiculous. I'm going to stop speaking to the resistant minority. I'm going to speak as if everybody's on my side. And it completely changed my persona, my energy. I was happier. I was more playful. I was more chilled. I didn't really care about what people didn't like. And it changed the whole energy of our room and our team as I stopped doing that. And I began to build with this mentality that I want to build a relationally rich life so that all the resources we may ever need are going to be available to us because I've lived a life rather than they're against us, they're against us, they're for us, and said to the church, build a mentality with your friends and family who aren't here. They're on our side, they're on our side. Because the logic of the disciples was, better the demons stay in than someone not from our group cast it out. Is that the alternative? Build a relationally rich life. Your resources, some of you need someone right now. You need a Joe in your life. And some of you are someone's Joe. Build a relationally rich life. Your resources are in your relationships. Y'all okay? All right, I'm going to stop. Let me mention a couple of resources. Hannah is here with me in the resources area. Hannah's worked with me for 14 years. She lives in Australia most of the time. Talk about remote staff. But when we do a tour, we meet and we do this together, so she's great. And I have a brand new resource that's only available, it's come available here today. It's called Seasons of Awakening. These teachings on here are the foundational concepts that I wrestled to get my head around and language for how I reinvented our church. I started a new church inside an old church. I started a new breed church that people told me it's not possible, leave it alone. But I did. And we transitioned and revolutionized and built a new breed church, the like of which I think I can honestly say England has perhaps never seen in recent history, the kind of church we built. People said to me, you can't do that in England. People don't go to church, especially the north of England. But we did. I did. And our team did. This season of awakening is the 50. A few weeks ago, I put together what are my foundational concepts. Here they are. This will work for you in your business and in your church community. Seasons of awakening. This is today here, only available today. It's going to be a QR code and you'll access it. Speak to Hannah about that. And secondly, EQ, Emotional Intelligence Mastery. I'm teaching this to corporates around the world because they're realizing they have a lot of IQ and AI but can't get on with people. Some of you grew up like I did in an emotionally dysregulated family. I never had emotional regulation modeled for me as a kid. I didn't. My dad was a violent alcoholic. And I just watched that all my life with my 4 brothers. And I knew as I got older, I need to double down on developing a really healthy emotional ecosystem in here. We don't talk about it enough in the church. So this is my gift to you today to go and explore this idea of how is your emotional intelligence? How are you at getting back from the mood that you are in? How quick do you pivot to get back to a calm state? Because some of you without emotional intelligence are in huge relational conflict. It's because you can't get on top of your emotions. And I want you to know how to do that. This EQ Mastery is a video teaching that's available out there today and other stuff, but those 2 things especially, think about getting a hold of with Hannah today. Let me pray for you guys. Father, thank you for these beautiful humans here in this room today. Every life, every story, every hurt, every pain, every trial and challenge. Thank you, you forensically see, understand, brought us into this space here together to learn and to grow, to be the best version of us we can possibly be. I pray in our hearts today there'll be a softening where there's been hard lines and resistance to building a wider relational circle. I pray that it will dawn on us afresh that our resources, even tiny things that no one knows we need, but they're hugely irritable in us. I pray we'll find this week, in the coming days, a breakthrough because we find someone that has the idea, has the language, has the way of thinking, has the relational network, has the phone number, has the door opening capacity to help us move forward in our lives from a sense of stuckness we often feel in resources we lack. Help us to build a relational, rich life, personally and corporately as a church. In Jesus' name. I love you guys. Thanks for listening.